what is the most difficult part about your business? If you were to survey most leaders, they're going to say finding great people. Today, we're going to talk about some tips to make sure that you hire the right folks. Stick around to the end because I think there's one very key thing that's missing from all the articles that you're going to read that you can only find out here today. Stay tuned. Everybody knows that finding great people is the key to success in business. Today, we're going to talk through 9 very specific tips that we use that will help any business owner throughout the hiring process. We always start with the start, which are core values. Core values and making sure that somebody that you're interviewing is aligned with the core values for your organization is key, right? There's a lot of things that you can teach somebody. There's a lot of skills that you can teach different people. But if they're not aligned with your specific core values, then it's not going to work out. We always say it's the same as a relationship, right? If you go to church every single Sunday and your partner doesn't, it might work out a little bit and it might work out for a little while, but eventually that partnership is going to fall apart. And it's the same when hiring any employee. So the number one tip and the very first thing to do whenever you're hiring somebody is form questions around what your core values are so that you can determine if their core values match up with yours. And remember, whenever you're starting with the interview process, we always say start at core values because at a minimum, they're in the interview process because they've already met all the minimum requirements from a skilled position that they need to be able to fulfill the job. That's why core values are essential. You should only be talking to people that already have the skill set to do the job. Your number one role is just to make sure that they're a fit for your organization. Tip number 2 is to have 2 different job descriptions, right? And this is the thing that a lot of organizations don't do, even large ones that we work with, where they have a public job description and that's the same and only job description that they have for the entire organization. We recommend having a public job description and then a more detailed job description that goes into a lot more depth. Click on one of these boxes that's somewhere on the screen to check out a video where we go more in depth on what the difference is, what that means, and how to write one yourself. We've also got a link in the description. Tip number 3, are they curious? Just curious people by nature, right? What type of questions are they asking you? Whenever they have a question, whether it's business related or personal life, how do they go about finding answers for that, right? What type of questions are they asking you in an interview? We always want to hire curious people, people that have questions and that should have questions. So always look for curiosity in your interview process. Going along with this curiosity part, right? Are they asking smart questions? It's one thing to come in and ask about what your vacation policy is, salary, what the day-to-day looks like, all of that type of stuff. But are they asking deeper questions, right? What does the position look like 3 years from now? What does the company look like 5 years from now? Those are the type of curious questions that when you hear them, you know that they're good questions. Look out for people who are asking those type of questions. We want curious people. We also want people to ask questions that tend to be forward thinking. Challenge everything, we always say, but we want really curious people during this stage of the interview process. Tip number 4, right? We talked about being curious. I'm always really curious about how people learn. Figure out what books they read, what podcasts they listen to. Ask for specific stories and instances when they did not know something that they wanted to know or needed to know, and what their process was for going about learning that new skill, trait, or piece of knowledge. Always look for curious folks. We talked about that. Tip 4, how do they learn? What is their process for learning? No matter if you're a bookkeeper, a salesperson, or the person who answers the phone, you want people to always be curious and learning. And that's tip 4, how do they learn? Tip number 5, and this is what I mentioned at the very beginning of the video. So I want you to lean in and pay close attention because this is the one thing out of all the articles that I've always read about the interview process and how to vet candidates. You don't ever hear about role plays, right? You hear a lot about it whenever you're interviewing salespeople, but we're strong believers in role plays for every type of position. This will teach you not only what they will do, but why they do what they do in the position. Stop asking questions about how they think, right? And what their answers are, but figure out why they think that. So it's real easy. Put them in scenarios that you know they'll face in that position, right? For sales or customer service or accounts, that's really easy. But do some real digging and ask people who have been in that position before certain scenarios if you're a leader that doesn't know what type of scenarios you need to test them with, right? Even interpersonal business stuff that you need to make sure you want to see how they react are good things here, right? I come in, it's 2 hours left in the workday, you've got X, Y, and Z on your plate, and I come in and ask you to help me write a video that I need to produce this afternoon because it's got to get published to social media tomorrow. How would you react? That's a great role play situation that could almost work for any type of position in your organization. So stop asking what they think and put them in that situation. Make them a little bit uncomfortable, and that's okay with it. Again, everybody's going to know and rehearse the questions that you're going to ask them. They're going to come in prepared, hopefully, at the minimum, with answers that they should give for very kind of similar and specific interview questions. Stop asking questions and start putting them in those situations. Tip number 6, get out of the office, right? If it's possible, or if it's safe to do so, lunch, dinner, a walk around the block, a drive around the parking lot. I like getting people out of the office situation because they'll let their guard down a little bit. So figure out what they're like outside the office, a Zoom coffee meeting, whatever the case may be. Tip number 7, we're almost there. This is a real easy one, and this is one that you're probably going to see a lot, which is, do you like them, right? What does that mean? Does that mean necessarily that you should want to be friends with them? No, it doesn't mean that you want to go over to their house and have a barbecue, right? It just means, does your gut tell you, or remember, you're a leader for a reason, right? You should not only know people, but know how to motivate people. Is your gut telling you this is a person that I like? If it is, that's a good step forward. It should not be the only determining factor by any means, but it should be one of the 9 that you look at. Tip number 8, figure out what their processes are internally for things. That sounds really confusing at first, but bear with me. What this really means is, instead of asking them for specific stories, which you still need to ask, tell me about a situation when you faced blank and how you reacted. But dig deeper, right? I'm a big believer in figuring out what is their process. Well, that's interesting. Tell me why you did that. We talked about role plays earlier, which is a little golden nugget that I hope you take away here. But after the role play, ask some follow-up questions. Why did you answer that question like that? What is your process for handling these type of situations whenever you're put in it? You want to see not only, again, I keep going back to this, you want to see not only how they react, but why they did things the way they did. Some answers hopefully should surprise you. This is another one of those situations where, as a leader, you'll know a good answer when you hear it, right? If the process is, oh, I don't know, it's just an instinct. I want to know that you're giving thoughtful responses to not only questions, but you're really deliberate about how you answer things in certain situations. This is important because, as a leader, no matter what role you're looking for, you're not always going to be around. And this is a good opportunity to test how that employee or potential employee is going to react whenever you're not in the room. Number 9, the last big tip, team interviews. I love team interviews, whether it's other staff members that they're going to work with, or if you're a smaller company, get everybody in there, right? This is always the last step in our interview process. Once somebody has been vetted by HR, they have a conversation with their direct supervisor, and they have another interview with the leadership team. The very last step is we have them meet the entire staff without any leadership present. And the only question we ask our staff is, what did you think of so-and-so? That's it. It does 2 things. It allows the staff to get to know the individual that they might be working really closely with, more closely than you in a lot of situations. It also gives the candidate a real candid opportunity to ask deeper questions to the staff. What type of manager is Jordan, right? What does a typical day look like here? You know, oh, well, how do you guys cultivate company culture? Any of those questions that they might want to ask you but aren't quite really sure how, or they just don't get a chance to, you'll be surprised about the type of personalities and the questions that are going to come up whenever you do these team interviews. So I would encourage, again, very last tip, number 9, get them to talk to your team. And don't even call it a team interview. Call it an introduction. We want to introduce you to the rest of our team. You can do it over Zoom, you can do it over person, you can do it over a team lunch, whatever the case may be. Team interviews are important. Very last thing that I'm going to leave everybody with is just know that even if you follow all these tips and the other 30 things that you could do during an interview process, just remember that no one's perfect at this. There's a reason that what I said earlier is true, that this is one of the hardest things for every single organization. Finding good people is tough and no one's perfect at it. So just know that even if you follow all of these things to a T, you're gonna run across either somebody that's not quite a fit. Hopefully this'll lessen that a little bit. Or just people that have situations where they need to move on, and that's okay. We know that hiring the wrong person is super expensive to an organization. Take an individual salary. Forbes.com says 30% of that salary is the cost of hiring a bad person. That's too expensive to be messing around with not hiring the right type of people. But just know that no one's perfect. Follow these tips, and we'd love to hear from you. If there's any others that you thought I missed, comment below. I'd love to hear about them. If you want more tips or information on everything from sales, marketing, hiring people, interview process, company culture, leadership, marketing, advertising, I may have repeated one or two of those a couple times, but anything from a business perspective, visit us online at iProvonline.com. And until next time, I'm Jordan. Peace, peeps. Good?
You did an amazing job. Like, with your hands, you knew exactly where the border was.
Oh, good. All right.
I don't think you really knew. But
No, I don't. I didn't really know. I just talk with my hands anyway.